Well, I want to thank everybody for joining today's Code Ninjas conference call. My name is Marty Flanagan. I'm the Vice President of Franchising with Code Ninjas, and I host these calls every week to help give you some insight, better ideas, and give you just a better visual, or hopefully visual, on who Code Ninjas is, what we're about, and give you a little bit better understanding of that and who we are and what's been happening. These calls are pretty simple. What I do is the first 15 minutes are just a brief overview, giving you a little bit of an idea of who Code Ninjas is, and then we're going to move into a Q&A. If you've heard these calls in the past, the Q&A can go as long as there's questions that are coming in. It's pretty simple. You're going to be able to, I'll be able to unmute your phone. You'll be able to virtually raise your hand, and then we'll be able to ask whatever questions you have, whether it's on something that I spoke about today, whether it's on something you've heard in the past, whether it's just general questions that you have that I wasn't able to touch on, and we'll be able to go into those questions as long as there's questions, as long as we'll go. I appreciate the questions, and I will definitely take my time through all of them and give you as much detail as I possibly can and with the answers to your questions. So if you're just jumping on, these calls typically have about 40 to 50 attendees. They're recorded. They're hosted on our YouTube franchising channel to listen to in the future. And again, my name is Marty Flanagan, the Vice President of Franchising with Code Ninjas. So Bert Tensipon, David Graham, and myself started Code Ninjas in October of 2016. This week of October 2016 is when we officially launched as Code Ninjas as a company. And we were under development of what we were doing in terms of the infrastructure of our franchise. So when it comes to our franchise support, our compliance, our marketing, when it comes to the digital strategies and how we were going to market for our franchisees, with our franchisees and us as a franchisor, establishing our PR, being sure that we were rooted, our feet were firmly planted, and then we were off and running. So our first location opened the same month we sold our first location. The first location opened in March of 2017, and that's owned by David Graham, not by the franchise. And then we also sold our very first location, in late March, early April. Fast forward to today, October of 2019, we have just over 520 sold locations inside the U.S., Canada, and now the UK. We have close to 200 locations open, over 270 franchisees, and all that happening within if you want to say, 3 years from our official start date as a company. But we didn't launch as a brand until March of 2017. So March of 2020 is our official 3-year birthday, and we're really excited to see how far we can get by that time in terms of our success with our franchisees. So how did all this come up, and what's the buzz? Why has there been so much growth? Well, obviously we know the market's ready for it. Obviously we know that the marketplace today has a severe lack of opportunity for kids to dive into this whole STEM activity and really dive into the coding and development aspect of what that's about. And David Graham, who owned a school that taught adults how to code for many years, that operated in 18 different cities. It was vocational, but there wasn't a week that went by that he wasn't asked about the younger generation. So being a coder and programmer himself and an entrepreneur, it just never left his mind. He kept thinking about it. He was being asked about it. So as he decided to really move on from that business and sell that, which is now part of Wazoo, he really continued to examine the market and was continually shocked at the problems that were out there and the lack of opportunity for entrepreneurs and the lack of opportunity for students and families to really get involved. And the problems were everything was really focused around camps. Everything was duplicatable. Everything could be copied by the next guy or the next guy. There was no unique pathway forward. And everything was really offered in a camp or classroom-style setting. So problem number one, we need to make it more convenient. We need to make it fun. We need to make this something where parents have the opportunity to engage in multiple different opportunities, not just one way of doing it. And being able to understand really what truly is the skill set that is being gained by students who are learning the coding, development, programming side of things. And we obviously had a very good understanding of that, being that we had a school that taught adults how to code. We had a really good understanding of really what that skill set is. the problem-solving skills, problem identification, critical thinking, collaboration, leadership, time management. Those behind-the-scenes skills is what makes a great coder and a great programmer. The language, obviously technology, learning the syntax of that technology, how that comes into practice, obviously is really critical, and we do work with that as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about our curriculum. But as we were building out Code Ninjas, we knew we had to be a franchise. Franchisees, entrepreneurs can deliver that exceptional experience like no other. And in their marketplace, being engaged in their community, getting to know the families that are coming in is critical for obviously any entrepreneur in their small business when you're customer facing. And so knowing this, understanding this, we wanted to make sure that we were focused on an experience-based child enrichment center. So we wanted to really focus on that experience. How can we do that? We need to have a clear roadmap forward with curriculum and opportunities for families to be engaged. So we went to work, and going to work created a pretty solid, smooth pathway forward. When you think of compliance support, you have dedicated individuals that are going to help you with understanding what's required for the brand. When it comes to understanding the design of your center, when it comes to operational support, technology support, curriculum support, not only do you have that internally, but we created a platform that allows our franchisees, and we cultivate those relationships to allow our franchisees to work together. So you can share best practices. You can communicate with franchisees all over the U.S., Canada, and the U.K., and you're able to learn from one another. So that collaboration side of Code Ninjas with your local franchisees and not so local franchisees, we have put that together so you're able to work with others who are in your shoes every day, work within the corporate office. Obviously, we also have conference calls and newsletters and conferences and new franchisee training. So we're continuing to offer support to our franchisees in how they can continue to deliver that exceptional experience inside their centers. When we look at the curriculum side of things and really how that is developed, we're no longer siloed into a certain age range, which for the last 2.5 years we were. We were focused on that 7 to 14 years old, and that was the main customers, and that's what's happening on the market today. Now we have our 4 to 8-year-old program, which we call our Code Ninjas Junior program. So Code Ninjas Junior, like I said, is a focus on 4 to 8 years old, and that is a non-reading based program for 4 to 8. Then we have our Code Ninjas Create. Code Ninjas Create, that is our original kind of, if you want to call it our foundation curriculum, is that Code Ninjas Create program. Code Ninjas Create we'll talk about in a minute, and we'll kind of go a little bit more into detail on that so you can understand that base or that foundation that you're going to have. Then we also have Code Ninjas, our Code Ninjas Pro. That program, that curriculum will be released in about a month or two. It's in beta test right now. That's for 12, 13, 14, and older, whether you're 40 or 50 years old. And that's a mobile-based program with in-house labs, so they're not coming in on a regular basis. It's a mobile-based program. Then we also have our camps, our workshops. We have after-school programming. We have parents' night out. We have birthday parties. So there's multiple opportunities for families to get involved in Code Ninjas. It's not just one, but there's multiple opportunities for families to engage with Code Ninjas with multiple age ranges. Between having camps that focus on dads and drones, we have mother-daughter focused activities as well. So it's not just about kids coming in and kids doing something, but we have a family activities as well, parent tech education nights. So multiple opportunities in there for families to get involved. To focus on that base or your foundation curriculum, which is going to be the majority of your income, revenue coming into your center, is going to be on your Code Ninjas Create. And this is what's really created a lot of the buzz. This is where we did a lot of the problem solving. So this is going to be a pretty detailed curriculum that you're going to want to make sure you fully understand as a franchisee. And as a prospective franchisee, you want to make sure you kind of get how this works and why it is successful and why it is making such a difference on the market today with Code Ninjas. So that curriculum itself is made up of 9 different belts to stay with the karate theme. And if you've heard the story in the past, David Graham was sitting in his son's karate studio. He looked and saw those 9 different belts and said, you can teach kids how to code like that. And then that's what triggered everything from that point forward for his ideas and bringing all this curriculum and the problem-solving aspect of what's on the market today. So this curriculum made up of 9 different belts. Within inside each belt is a learned set of skills or concepts. At the end of each belt, students are required to show their proficiency in those skills by building a game. So as they work their way through a belt, they're learning, they're playing concepts, they're putting those concepts into practice, and then when they get to the end of that belt, they have to bring all that together and show their proficiencies in all those skills and concepts by building a game that shows that. And that's how they progress. After they complete that, they can progress to the next belt. When it comes to every belt, they all work together. Cumulative learning. Each belt compounds onto the one prior, so everything works together all the way through. This curriculum is a flexible learning system. There's no classes, there's no lectures, it's not a classroom setting, it's a flexible learning system. Parents are going to bring their children in at their convenience. Their children are going to stay for an hour to 2 hours per week, so they can come in 1 day a week, and they can sit there for 2 hours, so they can come in 2 days a week for an hour each, and that's how they're going to be able to access the Code Ninjas curriculum. This curriculum is 90% proprietary and exclusive to Code Ninjas. This curriculum has an exclusive robotics program built into it. This curriculum also has proprietary textbooks that are with this curriculum that we built for this curriculum. This curriculum lives on our platform in the cloud, and when students come in, they're going to scan their wristband, and that wristband is going to match the color of where they are at in those 9 belts. When they scan that wristband, it unlocks the security measure and allows them to access the curriculum from their laptop. So they're going to log on to their dashboard, which is going to show the work that they've completed in the past. They can go back and play games that they've done in the past, and also it's going to help. That's what allows them to progress in the future. So it lives on our platform in the cloud. There's nothing to download for software or anything inside of your center. This curriculum takes 3 to 4 years for our students to accomplish if they're coming about 2 hours per week. So this is pretty in-depth. This works through 3 different languages. They're going to be working in JavaScript. They're going to be working in Lua. They're going to be working in C#. They are learning the syntax of these languages. They're not just cutting and pasting and running through them as fast as they can, but they are using their syntax. In belt number 2, for example, they're typing in pretty close to 1,100 lines of code just in belt number 2. They're getting to navigate that keyboard. It's really important that they navigate that keyboard, and they're going to be using keys that they've never done before, never seen before really, and used. Now they're putting that into practice and learning XY access. They're learning all that fun stuff what's inside of this whole program. And they're able to not only have fun with this, because that's really the fun, we have to keep it fun. We do believe we have world-class curriculum, but it doesn't matter if kids are not having fun, they're not staying engaged, we will lose them. You will have a high attrition, no matter how good your curriculum is. So that's why we keep it game-based. And that's why we focus on kids have fun, parents see results. We want parents to be able to play the games that their son or their daughter has built. We want parents to be able to see that your son or your daughter learned this skill, and this skill came into practice and did this. We want parents to be engaged and have fun with this as well, not just sit back, drop them off, and not be engaged and drive away. We want them to be able to see their son or their daughter's accomplishments. So we do have a parent portal where that can happen as well. So this curriculum itself, like I said, is going to be your main source. Now, accessing that curriculum 2 hours per week, being game-based, being fun, working through 3 different languages, proprietary textbooks, exclusive robotics program. It is a self-paced but not self-taught program. This program, when they work through this, they're going to hit the brakes in some places because they're not going to be able to work through a problem. Code senseis, these are the 16 to 22-year-olds that are going to be your code senseis. We have an 8-to-1 ratio of code sensei to student. So when a student runs into a problem, they're going to raise their hand. A code sensei is going to come over and sit with them one-on-one and help them work them through the problem that they're facing. So it's very individualized. It's not a classroom setting. So they're going to be able to receive help and assistance based on their learning style in that moment and that problem they're facing. very customized. How that's able to happen is because your code sensei's number one responsibility is to deliver an exceptional experience. And the only way we as a franchise and you as an owner can assist them into having that exceptional and delivering that exceptional experience is making sure that the curriculum is in place so the code sensei doesn't have to think about that. If they need to coach and teach the Code Ninjas curriculum, they're going to be able to do that and not have to think and work through the problems as like they've never seen them before. They're going to be able to continue to deliver that fun factor and be able to coach and teach the Code Ninjas curriculum. These 16 to 22-year-olds, these Code Senseis, that is the easiest hire you're going to have. That is the easiest part of this whole venture that you're going to have is Code Senseis. These are kids that are 16 to 22 years old. This feeds their future. They're coming to you to be in your environment because this is what they want to do with their future. They're not coming to you because they just need a job. Maybe they need a job, but this is where they want to be. This feeds their future. They can put on their application for a university or for their job application that they and add this to their resume that they taught kids how to code for X number of years at Code Ninjas. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of that curriculum, the multiple revenue streams that we have. Our Code Ninjas Create program averages $225 a month per student for 2 hours per week in the U.S. and Canada. So that program, like I said, parents pay that month-over-month tuition. It's paid each month. It comes out automatic. We have all the systems in place for you. You don't have to go and find a billing company, find a CRM. All that's in place for you already. Your operating system is there for all of your reporting. It's called your dojo. Everything is there for you. It's all customized. We built it for Code Ninjas. So it gives you a little bit of an idea. Camps, workshops, those are going to be, your camps are going to be your second source, your second number one revenue generator. Code Ninjas Junior just launched, and the feedback I'm getting, I was talking to a franchisee yesterday, the feedback that we're getting for Code Ninjas Junior program is outstanding. I mean, we wanted to beta test it as a company, so we said, hey, if we could just get 40 of our, out of almost 200 centers, if we could just get 40 that could beta test this, we'd feel like we had a successful beta test. We had over 90 locations step up and beg to be a part of it because there's such a demand for that 4 to 8 year old program, non-reading based program, which also can be used for special needs. Pretty exciting to have that opportunity. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of kind of what Code Ninjas is about, a little bit of a history. If you've heard these calls in the past, you know that I absolutely love answering whatever questions you come forward with. If you get to know my humor, you get to know my energy. I'm typically hopped up on a ton of caffeine. I do 2 of these calls each Friday, one for the U.S., one for the U.K., I leave all sarcasm aside, and I really want to be able to make sure I can answer your questions and take them seriously. And so it's pretty easy how it works. And really what all it is you hit star. And as you hit star 6, it virtually raises your hand. And when you virtually raise your hand, I'm going to be able to unmute you. Now, if I've done such a fantastic job and nobody has any questions at all, then we're good, right? Well, we'll end today's call. But if you have questions, this is going to be your time to hit star 6. It'll virtually raise your hand. I'll be able to unmute you, and you can ask whatever questions that you have for Code Ninjas. And we currently have about 40 people attending the call right now live. These are not pre-recorded. These are all live. And I'll ask any questions legally that I can answer. Fire away, and then I'll do my very best to answer your questions. Hi, you have a question?
Yes, hi. I was curious, what is the area sort of exclusivity by geography or by population that you would give for your franchisees?
Yeah, so territory, great question. So to understand our territory, there's a few things. It's multi-layered. We have internal and external matrices we use. When it comes to the size of the territory, and it can't just be because it's an available market. We also have to see it as viable. So when it comes to the size, it's going to vary depending on the demographics. The largest territories we grant are about 3 miles, But we also, to understand that, we also don't do stacking in franchising. So what that basically means is if, let's just say for an example, you have a 3-mile territory, we wouldn't put another Code Ninjas 0.1 mile outside your territory. If you had a 3-mile territory, you're looking at another Code Ninjas that would be, it has to be a viable market, mind you, would be 5 to 6 miles as a straight line as a crow flies away. And that would, but that also has to be a viable market over there and not just available. So we have to look at a few of the numbers to understand what's that market look like. So, but typically we don't do stacking as a franchise. 520 locations. We haven't stacked anybody. We don't plan on doing any stacking at all with inside Code Ninjas. We want to give you your own space. We like to have our centers a little further apart.
Yep. No, that's good. And then what about, if I look on the website and any ones that say coming soon, that means they're already purchased, or is that like you
Correct.
Want to put one there?
No, it's actually international. The federal government will be all over a franchise if they're putting locations on their website that aren't sold and paid for signed franchise agreements. So franchises, if they're doing that, it's illegal. So we as a franchise, only thing that's on our website are paid for, signed franchise agreements that have a required timeline to open.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, you have a question?
Hi. So is there a minimum requirement for the office hours and the class hours for the centers?
So when it comes to the hours, we do want you to be open 20 hours per week for our drop-in program, the Code Ninjas Create program. And just a reminder, we don't do classes, so there's a class setting or times people need to sign up for. But we do want you to have 20 hours per week for your Code Ninjas Create program offering, at least.
Okay. And any administrative office hour requirements?
We don't require it, but you do have to have a full-time individual dedicated to working the business. That doesn't mean you have to have them admin hours, but there's plenty to do. I mean, you're following up with, we have an entire daily checklist from obviously following up with emails to calling parents to market outreach, your overall marketing in general, making sure that your Code Senseis are ready to go, your centers, clean, organized, ready to go. So there's plenty of work to do. But we don't require you to have certain hours of where you're just going to be stuck in your office, but we do ask you.
It's in the hands of the franchise owners as much admin hours they need in order for the center to run smoothly. They can put in, but you don't have the requirements from your side.
Correct. We just require you to have a full-time individual, but that whatever they're doing is whatever they're doing. I mean, we're going to coach you and help you and want to guide you, but ultimately we're not going to babysit you.
Okay. And the second question is, is the person owning the franchise needs to be a full-time dedicated person, or we can hire someone to run the center for them?
You can hire. You don't have to be. You as a franchisee, as a franchise owner, do not have to work in the business full-time. We do not require that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Hi, you have a question?
Hi. Yes. Apologies. I was a little late in joining, and I didn't catch your name. Is it Marty or?
Yes.
Okay, Marty. Great. Thank you for holding the session first and foremost. I've got a few questions here, and again, apologies if you've got to reiterate something you mentioned right at the beginning, and I may have missed. But in terms of franchisee license cost, is there an estimation that you shared, or you can share?
Well, yeah. Well, actually, I didn't share it, but it is on our website. Okay. To open a Code Ninjas, you're looking at about $110,000 to about $250,000 US, and that delta really is going to come down to a landlord contribution. And that's the majority of that. You can have a little bit of a sway here and there, size of your sign, your marketing contribution, your inventory, right? You can go a little bit of a sway there, but the majority of that chunk is going to come from that your landlord is going to contribute what they call TIA, tenant improvement allowance.
Okay, understood. That's perfect. And then if you can, from call it a business model standpoint, can you share anything in terms of return on investment? So, with initial startup costs to essentially, recouping the time it takes to, let's say, break even to kind of lay that foundation?
So what we do, this is a public call, so I can't go over the item 19 in detail, but inside the franchise disclosure document, you're going to see the item 19. Inside the item 19 will give you average costs and average revenues being produced. But also what we do as a franchise is before you become a franchisee, we also like to give you and walk you through our Excel pro forma. Being that this is going to be a partnership, we're vetting you out at the same time as you're vetting us out. So we'd like to provide you the tools to be able to build out your model. So we have a nice Excel pro forma that you can plug and play the numbers and the different avenues, different revenue avenues, and the different costs. And in franchising, I can do a lot with cost with you. Like we can really spend a lot of time on cost. But as soon as I dabble in revenue, and that revenue it doesn't line up exactly with our item 19, it's actually against franchising law. So we have to be very careful there. But we try to provide you with all the tools that we can. Our first center will be open will be 3 years in March of 2020. We provide as much data as we can legally through our item 19 and our FDD.
Okay, perfect. And a couple of questions more. I'll try not to take up too much of the remainder of the time here. But in terms of, I guess, call it average staff, let's say, per week. Is there, call it a magic number?
Let's go with opening. Let's go with opening. When you open your doors for business, you're going to want to look at having 3 to 5 code senseis. And again, those are part-time positions, so they're not all working at the same time. And you're going to want to have 1 full-time center director. Okay. Now, if you're the owner-operator, obviously you don't need to hire a full-time center director, but you're going to want to have 3 to 5 part-time code senseis. And as time goes on, you would need to hire more and more depending upon your numbers, obviously your student count. And along with that, in that Excel pro forma, it's an automatic formula that actually adds on as your students add on. The formula is automatic where it increases your labor costs. So you're actually going to be able to have that formula built right in, and you can actually see your labor costs go up based on your student counts and based on your camps as well.
Okay, that's good. And I think this should be the last one. Is there? I'm trying to shape this properly. So, have the majority of franchisees, let's say the successful ones, have they seen success across, let's say a demographic in terms of age or race or anything like that? And the only reason why I asked that question is just purely based on where we're located, where kind of what we're thinking may work, or the type of students that we can expect to see. Like, is there any numbers that you can share or opinion on that piece?
I think every part that I would share, there's a franchisee who's proving me wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of really tough because we have some markets where we have a high immigrant community and they're knocking it out of the park, right? They're crushing it. And then we go to a community that's not, that does not have a high immigration, let's say immigrant population, and they're knocking it out of the park. So race is not really, right now from what we're seeing, it's not playing a major factor. When it comes to income, I can say that we have a certain income level that we look for. We have a median household income that we look for, and we have a certain student count that we look for. Otherwise, a market is not approved. So we don't go into low income areas, our low student count areas. So you could even have, the median household income is $150,000 per year, but you only have 2,000 students. That would not be approved. Okay. So we look for that balance more than we look for one being a lot higher than the other in terms of demographics.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And sorry, one more thing that popped into my mind. Just in terms of invested interest from, let's say from a corporate or franchisee standpoint, if you're like, let's say Code Ninjas proper is not seeing the type of attrition that they expect to see with a specific location, is there an opportunity between the franchisee and somebody specific within Code Ninjas to kind of sit down, take a look at the model, observe over, let's say, whether it's a week or 2 week or even a month period of time, and try to figure out what could be done better or what could be worked on or changed or tweaked to get to the optimal level from a performance standpoint. Do you understand what I'm saying with that?
Yeah, so franchise support, so the difference between, and a lot of times if somebody hasn't dabbled in support, your question really focuses around support. So if somebody's looking at a franchise versus a license, licenses don't offer support. Franchises were all about support. So everything is about, the support is the backbone of the franchise. So that's why we have so many different avenues of support. If you're not doing well, we're going to know just as fast as you're going to know because we can see your numbers. Yeah. And we want to be able to see what's happening. So when you look at, your question is one that you, as a franchisee, no matter what brand you choose to go with, whatever you choose to venture off with, you as a franchisee have to take responsibility in asking for support, not just saying, why didn't you call me? You saw my numbers weren't good. Or why didn't you call me? You saw my attrition going down. Why didn't you call me because my pre-sale wasn't well? Yeah, we have an open door. Like, I've given my cell phone number away on these calls. I have no problem with talking to any franchisee, prospective franchisee, and talking about their day-to-day. I'm not going to dabble in some aspects of it. I'm going to let my support team do that. But when it comes to your overall performance, I was on a call with a franchisee last night. He's been operating for 11 months, and I said two things, and he's like, never thought of that. I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, franchisees. My team does it every single day. We're here to support you and help you and guide you through. It doesn't mean everything we're going to say is going to be perfect for you, but our job is to help cultivate ideas and connect you with other franchisees as well, share best practices, and try to offer as much support as we can because we want to set you up for success, not failure.
Okay. That's awesome, Marty. I really appreciate the time and,
no problem.
And obviously answering the questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, you have a question?
Hi, thanks for taking the time here. I'm Ben. I'm from Canada, and we did get the FDD. The question I had was regarding kind of the revenue stream, and I appreciate if you can't answer it here on the call. But I know that in terms of some of the pricing, it can be somewhat set by the franchisee, right? And can be flexible in that standpoint. But as we're kind of looking at, building the financial model around it, one of the questions that I did have.
You have a wolf. You have a wolf in the background. So
he's about a foot tall, maybe. One of the questions I did have was how do we go about setting the prices and things like that without necessarily competing against other Code Ninjas that may be in the same city or something like that? Because I don't see that we want to necessarily compete against other franchisees. We're just competing for the market itself.
Well, so a couple things with that. There's a couple things. One, it goes back to an earlier statement that goes pretty deep in cultivating collaboration between franchisees and building that platform for you. So we want to make sure before you become a franchisee, you understand the culture of working with other franchisees is really critical. When you come aboard and you already start to see how important that is for us as a brand, that you need to be working with your local franchisees and franchisees from all over the country and sharing best practices and working together, automatically you start to have a mindset of this is a team. We don't want you competing against one another in terms of pricing. Also, why we also keep our centers a little bit further apart. We don't do that stacking. When you do stacking, that's where the price competition really kicks into high gear because you're 4 miles apart. But when, as a drive time even, or even closer, where you're 5-6 miles apart and your territories don't even barely touch. That means you're within your territory. Listen, you have that captive community there. So we obviously want to help you. We work with you, but certain laws prevent me from saying this is what you have to charge. We do have maximums. We do have minimums. We have things like that in place. But you're going to want to work with your franchisees. You're not going to want to be separate too much. And also, we try to keep prices, our costs in check. I can tell you that I've turned down locations because rent costs were too high, which then was going to force our pricing to be high. And when you go down that road, you're having to charge a certain dollar amount that nobody else is charging in your community. Why? Are you offering that more of an exceptional service, or is it because you have to charge it because your expenses got out of control? So we work with you in the beginning, too, to help you with understanding where your pricing can be at. We don't tell you, but we can give you ideas of where others have started. And we also work with you when you become a franchisee and how to tier your pricing up, which we've had a lot of trial and error with ourselves, our location, and franchisees, so we can speak from experience there as well.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, because in my mind, with other Code Ninjas possibly in the area, the only differentiating factor in my mind should be just convenience, right, and location.
Well, that's what we hope, right? We hope that everybody's delivering that exceptional experience, but we also know that we're human beings and that some people are just going to like to be around other people more than others. So we get that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Hi, you have a question? Hello, do you have a question? No? Hi, do you have a question? Hello, do you have me on mute? Maybe? All right. Hi, do you have a question?
Yeah, curious about the requirements of the center. Does it have to be like a standalone building and have all the signage? Is there build-out requirements? What are the requirements in terms of the center?
It doesn't have to be a standalone building. It has to be in a retail center. You have to have a dedicated location for your Code Ninjas, but it doesn't have to be standalone, but it has to be in a retail setting. And we have a full construction manual, design manual to meet all of the Code Ninjas branding guidelines.
Okay. Also, you'd mentioned that, in terms of determining if a location is viable, you look at standard incomes and the student count. What other kinds of things do you look at?
So we also look at, let's say for an example, you have you say, well, okay, but if this matches up with what you're saying, just don't tell me towns. But let's say you found a community, you're in a community that has lower than median household, lower than average income, good student count, you're in a rural community somewhere. We would look at that and say, okay, who's the franchisee? What is their expenses? What are the markets compared to this market? How are they performing? What kind of franchisee is that? What are they doing? Are they active? Are they not active? So we're going to look at multiple different angles to say, okay, if we're going to go into a community that is unlike what we say is our average looking for community, it doesn't meet our standards, we're going to want to compare that to other. Did we allow that somewhere else, and how are they doing? Or is there someplace else that's similar, and how are they doing? I mean, we're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Rapid City, South Dakota, and we're in Fargo, North Dakota. I mean, we're in smaller towns, so we would want to look at all those different pieces of the puzzle to be sure that we're setting you up for success. I mean, we're giving you one of our babies, right? And you're investing your money into us. We have to make sure that this is a good fit for all of us.
I'm on the same call here. I've got a couple other questions. Sure. One is, and I know you guys don't have a whole lot of time-based data yet, but revenue expected, say the first year for a startup typically, and what's the franchisee commitment? I mean, other than obviously the upfront costs that we'd be committed to primarily with leasing, but how long until, if we don't see revenue coming and sufficient income, when can we pull the plug, or is there a commitment that you require franchisees to make in terms of number of years?
Well, so all of our great questions there. One, let's start with the revenue side of it. The only revenue we can discuss is what's inside of our item 19 inside the franchise disclosure document. So once you get that, you're able to look at that. We also, like I mentioned earlier, provide you with some tools that allow you to build out your model that have plug and play and formulas built in for labor and expenses and taxes and royalties and all that fun stuff that's built into that document. And you don't have to be a franchisee to get that document. You just have to enter the process, the vetting process with us. When it comes to the time commitment, we have a 5-year franchise agreement. When you talk about going into a space, your landlord is going to make you sign a lease that's probably going to be at least 5 years. So the landlord is going to make you sign a 5-year lease as well. So when you talk about pulling the plug and things are not going your way, there's more than just a franchise you're going to need to worry about there. And same with the funding. If you're self-funding it, I get it. But if you're getting a loan, then there's that aspect that you're going to have to account for as well. So, and the F word hasn't happened yet with Code Ninjas, but we know we can't stop it. But the F word hasn't hit us yet. Almost 200 locations, close to 3 years in. We haven't had a failure yet. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, like I said, but we're ready for it if it does, in terms of what we can learn from it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hi, you have a question?
Yes. What's your curriculum update release schedule for 2020, and what's the rollout plan?
So when it comes to whenever we do rollout plans with our curriculum updates, for an example, we're 2.5 years in, and we just rolled out version 3. When it comes to that, we have a franchise advisory council, and we also beta test. So we don't, when it comes to technology, to say, there's going to be an update in May, that's not realistic to put timelines on that, because it's a continuous feedback loop coming from our students, coming from our franchisees, our parents. So version 3 was just released actually this month. So when it comes to timelines, like I said, if you look at just the last 2.5 years, major changes, I don't think you're going to see major changes. We make minor changes. Our curriculum, we always say, is complete but never finished. And our franchisees, we have curriculum newsletters, conference calls, a franchise advisory council, which is made up of franchisees, are active in that as well, and we have beta tests that we work with our franchisees. Like I said, this Code Ninja Junior beta test, we were hoping for 40. We had 90 locations jump up to want to do a beta test. That kind of feedback coming from franchisees is critical. And timelines, that's tough. I don't want to commit to any timelines on when that happens.
Okay, so what I'm understanding you just said is that you're getting ideas for improvements from lots of different sources. You're putting them into a backlog. You have some sort of council that's prioritizing that backlog. But where do you draw your line in that backlog as far as this is what we're going to include in the next update?
Well, actually, that comes from our franchisee feedback.
Okay.
Mostly. We have a full team of curriculum developers as well. So so it's not like we just hire out and farm out and figure it out. We actually have a team that is continually working on every aspect of our camps, our workshops, and going through our curriculum and making fine-tuned changes. Any type of changes that are going to be more of a major change that are going to affect any kind of day-to-day operations, that's where like version 3 came out, where here are the updates, here's what it looked like, here's the newsletter, here's a conference call discussing it. And those are, so when it comes to that backlog, it's prioritized based on franchisee feedback. So if there's 10 pieces in there, let's say, or 10 items in there, but the continuous coming in, or it'll bump it up on that list. So the top 3 to 5 are getting constant focus. And now if there's something that's an emergency, because, stuff breaks, right? We love it if somebody breaks our stuff because that allows us to fix it. That's obviously an emergency fix. But when it comes to these general pieces of updates, it's based on franchisee feedback and customer feedback. We're not a dictatorship where we just tell you this is what the change is, whether you like it or not. We really take that feedback from our franchisees. They're on the ground every day, working with students every day. Their feedback is critical to our curriculum development.
Okay, and what's the length of time a franchisee is given to implement the update?
Well, it was going to happen immediately.
Immediately? Okay.
Yeah, the flip it happens across the board in terms of when the curriculum is updated, it happens throughout the entire system. And it's not like a major change to where everybody's got to get all trained in again. That's not how this works.
Right. So then there's a period of time from the beginning of the announcement that it's coming to implementation. So during that period of time, there's, like you said, meetings being held and training going on to get people up to speed, right?
Yeah, because it's not going to be to where, oh great, I got to bring my entire staff in for a week and I got to train them for 40 hours this week. It's nothing like that.
Right. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hi, you have a question?
Hey, Marty. Quick. I actually have a few questions, and I'll try to make them fairly quick. So with regards to the territories, you had mentioned that maybe a 5 mile, is that a 5 mile radius, I'm assuming, from the point of the actual location, or are the territories more based off of zip codes, or do you already have the territories that are predefined, so you would say these are the territories we have available?
Well, just for clarity, it's up to a 3 mile radius. We have territories that are 1 mile, mile and a half, 2, 2.5, 2 1/4, 2 3/4, and then a 3 mile is the max that we do. We don't do predetermined. I don't have predetermined territories. Everything we do is an individual basis based on the community, based on the area, based on the code ninjas that are already there. How are they performing? It has to be a viable and available market, not just available. So we have to take into consideration the neighbors. How is everything going in that market, and how are they receiving code ninjas? I mean, if we have a struggling location, why is it struggling? What's happening? And why would we approve a location to be 6 miles away?
Right. And then my other questions on that are, do you allow franchisees to have multiple territories, or do you try to limit the number of territories that a single franchisee is allowed to have?
Up front, as a franchisee, it would have to be special approval and special circumstances to have more than 2. So you can buy 2 up. You can buy 2 up front. To have more than 2, there's special circumstances around that, and we have to go through a special approval process that franchisee would have to go through.
Okay, and you don't allow.
After you're a franchisee, if you had 1, like we had a franchisee who had 1, and now after he's a franchisee, he's buying 4 more. Go for it. You're a franchisee. You're in our system. Everything's going well. You want to buy more, buy more. It's when you're new, we restrict it to 2.
Okay. And then I only have 2 more questions, and they're actually fairly quick ones, I hope. So with regards to the hours, I know that it was mentioned at the beginning, the 20-hour minimum that you say on that. And, like, for instance, my children, they are currently enrolled in the Code Ninjas program in our area, but it's quite a drive for us to get there, which is what got us thinking about the franchising in the first place. But can you open at other hours? And I know that the majority of your the code senseis are actually going to be 16 to 22-year-olds. Are you allowed to open your facility earlier in the day if you actually have the older staff that is obviously not in school, if you can still support those hours for that period of the day? So let's say for the beta test program.
Well, yeah, let's say you had a homeschooler network out there, then you wanted to have homeschoolers.
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting at more
totally. Oh, yes, completely can do that. Yes, not a problem.
Okay. And then the last question that I had was, the site actually lists all of the fees, and it's a fairly large range, and I'm assuming that also depends on the area that you're in. So a city like New York, for instance, is going to be a lot more expensive to upstart a business than, like you had mentioned, Fargo, right? So in addition to those fees, the one fee that I didn't actually see on there were any of the continuing franchise fees. So are there a percentage of the income or revenues that have to be paid in terms of royalties to the franchise every year?
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's actually per transaction. It's 8.25% per transaction. And that's actually built into that Excel pro forma that I mentioned a few times. So all the things are built into that pro forma, so you can actually see your true in and out.
Okay. And then if we're ready, if we think that we've done enough research on this going forward, at least for our area and what the product actually is, and we are ready to move forward and make that request to get the process started, how do we go about doing that?
If you have not heard from one of my team members, email me, Marty, M-A-R-T-Y. It is unacceptable if you don't know where to go from here based on my team reaching to you. So make sure you reach out to me. Yeah,
that could actually be a problem with my wife. She's the one that started all the calls, so she gets all of the emails. So she probably has a gentleman that she's supposed to talk to, and I just don't know about it. I'm the one that got to come to the information session.
No problem. You can, if you haven't, if anybody on the call, so I'm glad you brought it up. If anybody on the call has not heard from one of my team members, and I have a team here in North America and a team in the UK, be sure that you email me, Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at codeninjas.com, and I will get you connected.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining today's Code Ninjas conference call. We have our upcoming Discovery Day next week with 50-plus attendees. We have our UK Discovery Day coming up with 50-plus attendees. If you would like to come to Discovery Day, if you'd like to dig in further and know more about Code Ninjas and talk more about your market and understanding really all the different aspects of what we do, how we do it, and why we're different, why we've exploded, and this compelling reason why Code Ninjas is here and is growing the way we are, please reach out to me, Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at codeninjas.com. And thank you for your time today. Much appreciated.